Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today, we are going to take a non-spoilery look at Kaiju number 8, chapter 59. This chapter was just fun and interesting. So, Matsumoto really keeps track of the plot threads well, and even the ones that we don't see twitching at any given moment, I think we've learned to trust Matsumoto has them somewhere under control. Matsumoto is not the kind of mangaka to let plot threads go. And this chapter really seemed to be Matsumoto gently tugging on a few plot threads that we haven't had a chance to look at in many chapters, just to kind of remind us where they are and give us hints of where the story is going. As is entirely unsurprising, because this is, after all, a shonen manga, as I keep saying, and we know what kind of manga we're getting. This chapter focuses a lot on relationships and the relationships between the main characters. We get some real Namaka vibes coming off of this chapter. But before I go on, I'm going to give you a moment to check out the links below the video. Humans Are Weird. I have the data, and Humans Are Weird. We took a vote. Books of human absurdity, which with much good Namaka friendship in them. So, chapter 59. This chapter, it really brought home to me, and it wasn't nearly the main point of the chapter, but it really brought home to me the extreme levels of stress and the inhuman mental fortitude it would take to actually do this job if this were a real job. And there are definitely real life counterpoints in the military and firefighters. But this chapter really illustrated to me, in a kind of an amusing way, how much stress this responsibility would put on people. And one of the ways this is kind of illustrated is through the relationships between the vice captains and the captains. We've only seen a handful of those, but in each case, the vice captains, half their work appears to be keeping their captains in line. This is most obvious with Hasegawa and Captain Narumi, because Hasegawa is basically Narumi's babysitter whenever it comes to anything happening outside of a direct combat field. Hasegawa cleans up after him, Hasegawa keeps him in line, drags him to meetings. It's a very blatant dynamic. We get a more subtle dynamic with the captain and vice captain of, let's see, I think it was the 4th Division, correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, the captain and vice captain who we get to see interacting in this chapter, they also have that caretaker dynamic where the vice captain's job is to make sure the captain stays alive, stays combat ready, stays coherent. Now, even if we look back at some, I weren't sure they were actually captain and vice captain, but at the general director and the deputy director, Shinomiya, and I think it was Itami. I can't, maybe that wasn't his name, but old Baldy, they definitely had that same dynamic. Baldy was the one who reined in Shinomiya. Shinomiya had a deep respect for him. The position of second in command in this universe really seems to be as much as about caretaking the first in command as it is preparing to be a first in command in your own right. Then you have the captain and vice captain that we've seen the most of, Minashiro and Hoshina. So they definitely don't have the same child and babysitter relationship that Narumi and Hasegawa have. And Mina is in way more control than the captain of the 4th Division is. And Mina seems far less likely to go charging directly into a one-on-one combat than the general director. But still, our first introduction to their dynamic, we see Vice Captain Hoshina essentially doing Mina's job for her. He's the one who's completely arranged the training session. He's in charge of the training session. She is just blindly ignoring everything, focusing on one thing, doing paperwork, while Vice Captain Hoshina lines up everything for her, briefs her on what's going on, and you can see in those scenes he's trying to pull her into these things, which probably are her duties. And his first comment to her is, "You don't care about anything except killing kaiju." And because that is her job, because we have so much respect for for her at this point, because we see her through the main character eyes, we missed the glaring character flaw there, which was she only cares about killing kaiju, but she is the commander of a military unit. She needs to be thinking about paperwork and taking care of her subordinates and all of that, but she just doesn't. Mina Shiro focuses entirely on killing kaiju and leaves all that other stuff to Vice Captain Hoshina, to her vice captain, to her caretaker. And this chapter really drove home that dynamic for me. And it made me kind of think, are we going to see Captain Reno and Vice Captain Iharu? That'd be a pretty interesting dynamic. And then this chapter really just drove home something that we've seen constantly woven in as one of those minor aspects of realism that make Matsumoto's work so great. Just the massive stress of the duty that falls on these Defense Force officers. It's illustrated with the death toll, the casualty percentage that we have stated in this chapter, but we can see how much of a toll it's taken. None of these officers are sane or normal. The burden has just been warping them, and probably only warped people accept those positions in the first place. We got a close-up on the general director's mindset, everything that Isao Shinomiya had sacrificed and forced himself to become, to be the best officer that he can be. We've seen the just straight up craziness in the deputy director's eyes. The only one of those top 3 officers who could be remotely considered to be sane from what little we've seen is the one who's missing an eyeball. Then again, we have the captains. They're either one's a heavy drinker, one has completely subsumed himself in media and fandom, probably to block out what he doesn't want to think about. And Mina has become a kaiju killing machine who has shuffed off or gotten rid of all of her childhood connections. None of these are mentally healthy people, but they're out there doing their job, making these sacrifices to keep their home safe. And none of this has ever been deliberately made a point of. It's just there. You can see it in the story looking back. And it just takes a chapter like this, one casual comment, to just highlight it and bring it out. And that is just excellent storytelling. And Matsumoto is just really good at that. When it comes to world building, character development, or plot points. For instance, we have had a lot of conversation about, does Kaiju number 6 have ice-themed powers? And those were just based on subtle hints. And to be quite frankly, after this chapter, we still don't know whether Kaiju number 6 truly has ice-themed powers, or whether this ice theme that Matsumoto has been using up to this point is just more metaphorical. We don't know. But Reno used freeze rounds. Kaiju number 6 was kept on ice. The weapon number 6 was kept on ice because there wasn't a compatible user. These are all subtle things that in of themselves don't suggest an ice-themed monster, but as you layer them one on top of the other, you definitely get that feeling that that's what Matsumoto was working towards. And we get not an answer in this chapter, but another layer of cold ice imagery that is telling, but we don't know what it's telling us. But when we do get to that moment, when we are told explicitly what Kaiju number 6's powers were and are, then I think it's all going to make perfect sense. I'm learning to trust Matsumoto a bit. In that same vein of Matsumoto layering on layer after layer of implications but never outright stating something, Reno is still pretty sus. I mean, my running pet theory has been that Reno may not be a kaiju himself, but definitely has some extra connection to kaiju that no one else has. Maybe he comes from a family who worships kaiju, maybe he's in communication with benevolent kaiju, but I've always had the idea that Reno was partially responsible or involved in some way with the little guy claiming Kafka. And there's a bunch of different ways that could go, and again, this chapter offers no answers. And looking at it one way, we could just be seeing Namaka feelings for each other, if you get what I mean. But we could also see this building towards Reno feels a sense of responsibility for Kafka because this is essentially Reno's fault. But we don't know. And then finally you have the final main, I'm not even going to call it a thread, it's more a cord running through the entire story. The fact that these kaiju's wills maintain intact after they die. You have these super powerful intelligences, these creatures that can be blasted down to almost nothing and still revive from a fragment of their core. And it seems that even after their cores have been destroyed, even if their bodies have been stripped down to almost nothing, some element of their will, their consciousness, survives in their bodies, survives strong enough to affect the officers that are wielding them. We get another close-up look at that. We really don't learn anything new, but this is becoming such an integral, central part of the story, how these, especially these numbers weapons, maintain the intelligence, the willpower, the pride of these kaiju past their death. I think, well, I'm pretty sure that is building to be a major part of the story. Something inherent about the kaiju that we can't imagine yet and that I really look forward to seeing. So, that's my analysis of Kaiju number 8, chapter 59. Spoiler free, hit that like and subscribe button below the video. Check to see if you already subscribed, check to see if you're still subscribed because YouTube will delete your subscription. And peace out, my wonderful viewers. Humans are weird. We took a vote, and humans are weird. I have the data. 2 books in a series of human absurdity. Go check out these short story collections. What will our little green friends think of us when we finally do make it to space? Find out the answer in 2 books of human absurdity. Humans Are Weird, We Took a Vote, and Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and Google Play.